Fragments of silicon, an important component of stained glass windows everywhere.
Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. And let's shimmy to the news. Twilight, why don't you start us off this week?
All right. Well, as I've been talking about for the past few weeks, weather and environmental hazards have been a concern around here the past few weeks, and the weather's calmed down for the most part for now, but we've still got some flooding, and there seems to be no real concerns with mudslides right now, though. However, some of the hillside roads are starting to break some, and we're hoping those get taken care of soon.
Like,
Huh?
Mud just seems to be your life right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Traveling concerns to work.
Indeed.
Anyway, on a lighter note, I got a new leather chair from a family friend.
Man.
Yeah. Pretty neat. It's of course used, and it's got this sort of leaning right thing going on here, but otherwise I love it. It's better than my old one, which, if I'm not careful, the back of the seat would fall out.
Those are the best.
Yeah. Besides that, I've been trying to finish up on Dragon Quest XI before I move on to anything else. And that's about it.
All right. Alex, time for you and your, computer.
The computer is now physically assembled. I had to, when I was getting stuff together, I needed some extensions for the power supplying SATA cables to reach where the hard drives go. Since I have small hard drives, they go on a weird place instead of in the normal drive cage, and I'm saving the normal drive cage for after I get this computer up and running. I'm going to need to attach the hard drives from my old computer to it, at least temporarily, to pull stuff off of, because I still need that stuff. So, unfortunately, I didn't get home earlier than I had sort of hoped to get home earlier today, but there were some traffic problems. But tomorrow I'm going to be hooking it up and turning it back on, and hopefully Petty Fan will be available at some point in the evenings to answer all of my super anxious questions about what does it mean that it's not doing exactly what I want it to do.
Yeah, theoretically, he should hit the switch and it should fire back up, because we had a little snafu where I forgot about a connector that he needed to plug in.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I didn't know the CPU needed a separate power connector from the motherboard.
In my defense, that's a fairly recent addition to the ATX standard, and I totally forgot about its existence too.
Well, and I probably didn't ask about it the most clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, I almost had a heart attack when I tried to get it to do a power on self test, and like the lights and fans went on, but there was no graphics output and no beeps or anything, because there's supposed to be beeps and you're supposed to get like text. But but yeah, we think that's probably just because the CPU was getting
not enough power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, crossed fingers that it will work when we try it again, because if it doesn't, then that means I probably need to get a replacement for one or more of the components, and because I was in a hurry, I didn't get all of the protection plans on everything, so I would probably have to spend more, but
It should be fine.
I'm hoping so. So yeah, I have a lot of specific questions about that, but you know, that can wait. I've actually already started the game for this week that I'm reviewing on the Switch, which is Riddled Corpses EX. Not a lot, but a little. It's a twin stick shooter, which is like a. It's very. What's it called? Robotronish or whatever. Whatever. What was the really old twin stick shooter?
Yeah, that would be Robotron.
Yeah. It's kind of Robotronish, so a lot of mooks to keep an eye out for, and you only get like 3 hits, so haven't made it very far yet, but we'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And today I have had a pain in my side all day that because I'm a stupid paranoid person, was worried might be appendicitis, but it's on the wrong side for that, and I don't think I have flipped around organs, so it's probably not that. I probably just like stretched a muscle while I was shoveling the other day or something.
You don't spend hours of the day on WebMD, do you?
I don't, because I know if I did,
We'd be
would
putting
be
him in a
ridiculous.
loony bin.
Right. I am aware that I am vulnerable to like medical paranoia, so I try not to get too in depth about stuff.
In medical terms, we call this hypochondria.
I'm
Ew.
not like super hypochondriac, but a little bit maybe.
It shows.
Well, no, and I'm just worried because the whole computer thing has been driving on my nerves, and I'm just worried that like the last thing I need to do with that, to have on top of that, is rupturing my appendix out of stress or some shit. Anyway.
That is a whole bunch. I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Petty, you're up.
I know the technical thing is vent your spleen out of anger, but I figure it's close enough to the neighborhood.
Right.
Anyway. That's about what I have, so next person can go.
Eddie?
Not a whole lot on my camp. I go see my knee doctor on Monday, and we're potentially going to discuss me seeing a surgeon about my knee, which is going to be fun. And then Tuesday, I have to go try and do that pH study again, where they stick the tube down your nose to measure the acid in your stomach, so that's going to be a pain in the ass.
Right. Yeah, well, your knee surgery's been months in the making.
Years, but yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been...
Yeah.
You've been talking about it forever.
Yeah. And hopefully I still have insurance by the time they want to do it. But that's a whole nother kettle of fish that I have to deal with the week after next.
The universe truly does hate you.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else?
As far as gaming related stuff, not really. Just been kind of twiddling away at raids in Final Fantasy XIV, waiting for the expansion in June? I need to pre-order that soon so I make sure I have early access, but and then yeah, just kind of getting ready for my birthday into next month. I've been, fumbling through Amazon looking for stuff in various price ranges because, people don't have all of the monies, so.
Right.
And that's really it for me, so I guess next person?
That'd be me. Make this fast. Right now we're dealing with like what looks like to be the last Arctic blast of the season. Like it's currently, well, damn cold for this region. Like it was in the 50s today. and it's going to be like in the 30s tonight. Though it's warming up by the weekend, which is handy because I've got some heavy lifting to do. Like, mother's doing some sort of park activity and she needs some help carting around the materials. That's going to be fun. Now, it's like, curse you, upper body strength.
I feel that. Also lower body strength for me as well, but
well, it's like, yeah, I mean, compared to old women,
yeah.
like, you know, I have that in spades.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, still got to get the supplies tomorrow, and it's going to be cold, so not looking forward to that. But at least Friday will be warming up, so it, you know, so instead of freezing, I'll be sweating. You know, I guess it's a choose your poison kind of deal. You know, outside of that, not much going on. And anyway, since the audience is getting a bit restless, it's time to move over to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Sean Tani and Marina Kittaka of Analgesic Productions.
Hello.
I'm Sean.
This is Marina.
Hello. How are you both doing today?
Good. It's also been kind of cold in Chicago. It was really cold on Monday. Like, oh my god. Yeah, but it's getting better.
That's good.
So that's good.
Right. So how we like to start things off is asking how you got interested in video games on both a personal and a professional level.
Cool. So for me, well, I guess personally, I mean, I grew up with stuff, and I don't think there's anything particularly, I guess, unique to my childhood. But I think what's interesting is around middle of high school, I found this the indiegames.com blog, and I started following a lot of like small indie games. And you know, I didn't really think about the creators of games, having grown up playing Flash games on Newgrounds, but that blog kind of like brought me into thinking about, oh, you know, you can make games on your own. Yeah, but as for me, I grew up a Nintendo kid. My dad had a Super Nintendo, and I kind of got all the consoles.
And for me, let's see. So grew up playing like Game Boy and the original PlayStation, and then I think my older brother and I, you know, we would only get to buy a game every once in a while or whatever, and so we would go on the internet and try to like find free games. And what that kind of led us to were hobbyist communities like surrounding Game Maker and this other RPG maker called the OHR RPG CE that we were pretty into. And so I kind of grew up aware of this like concept of just like small random people like making games for fun, and was always kind of trying to do that, but nothing really took off until I met Sean in college.
Right. And how did you two meet?
A friend of mine who went to my college went to, was it high school or middle school with Sean? And
Both, actually.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so basically we had a mutual friend. Sean and I did not meet in person until we were done with the game, our first game, or almost done.
Pretty close to done. I think we met in December of 2012, and we finished basically in January the next year.
Yeah, so basically we just connected over email and started working from there.
Yep.
What did you end up working on?
You mean like roles on the project?
Right.
Or like our first game was Anodyne, which we're currently working on a sequel to. And so, yeah, that started out as just Sean's project. And then you were like looking for an artist.
Yeah, so I was kind of, I was doing everything on my own. And I was looking for help with the art because my art isn't very good. And Marina filled in that role, but then we realized, I think that having some more writing would help, and Marina liked to write, so she did a lot of the writing for Anodyne and helped make some of the main characters and give the world some coherence, which I thought was really useful.
And was it a difficult process collaborating from a distance?
Not particularly, I guess. I think we did a little bit of Google Chat, but for the most part, it was all emails. So it would be like, and basically, the reason why it worked out pretty easily is because a lot of kind of like, I guess, some decisions had already been made about the art format being kind of like low resolution and the world concept. So a lot of Anodyne was kind of, oh, we'll discuss an area concept, and then Marina goes and makes the tiles for it in a test area or something, and then shows me that, and we're like, okay, cool. So luckily, Anodyne was a pretty simple type of game to collaborate on. Luckily, I kept the central mechanics pretty minimal, so I think that made it easy for that kind of remote collaboration to work out well.
Yeah, and I think we just kind of get along well too, and definitely felt it from the very beginning, like a sense of like mutual respect, and that we both have like these separate skills that we do that are like complementary to each other. So it worked out very well.
Yeah, it was a pretty lucky match.
That is good to hear. Now, I suppose we should focus a bit more on Anodyne itself. Like, for example, for those who don't know what this game is, what is it exactly?
Anodyne 1 is a sort of Game Boy Zelda-like surreal adventure set in a dream world of this human named Young, and it takes its visual influences from kind of surreal RPG Maker games like Yume Nikki, and it features natural and urban and abstract areas that you kind of explore through with these little 16-bit screens, and explore dungeons and find treasure and kind of discover the why are you in this dream world and those kinds of things.
See, then that's quite a mix there. What was the seed of inspiration for Anodyne 1?
Anodyne 1 inspiration, I had just finished my magnum opus. I'm just kidding. This game called Inspiration Dave, which was a Flash game I made on my own, and I kind of wanted to emulate Link's Awakening and those kinds of Game Boy games, but I also wanted to make something a bit more personal and kind of surreal and dark. So I made a little prototype of the screen transitions in Link's Awakening and how it scrolls. I made a prototype of that, and then in the months after that, I kind of made some art and tile sets and stuff. There wasn't a lot of solid game plan out until I started working with Marina, but the core of it was there. So kind of a personal adventure with Zelda mechanics and very surreal setting.
Right. And out of all Zeldas, what made you pick Link's Awakening? Now, that's not
the best one.
It's the best one.
We like it a lot.
It's one of my favorites as well. It's just in terms of go-to Zelda influences, it's not the one you usually hear about. It's the original, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, what have you.
Occasional oddball with Zelda 2.
Right. Oh, yeah. Zelda 2.
I do think there's something unique about the Link's Awakening. Does some things that the other Zelda. I mean, for one thing, it's the only Zelda game I can think of where you can unequip your sword. That and the Oracle games.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which are basically the Link's Awakening 2 and red version and blue version.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, Link's Awakening is a fantastic game. I mean, it's just, once again, it's unusual to see influence drawn upon that, but that's not a bad thing.
Right. It has, I guess, and for one, I mean, I guess the art style, but also just the setting itself. It's a pretty like kind of. I played through it last year. It's a pretty kind of like lighthearted and almost like goofy game at times, but there was just I think the team itself had some influences like Twin Peaks and stuff like that. It was a team of like 8 or 9 like people in their like early mid 20s. I think just like having a good time making this game, and you can kind of like feel that sort of energy coming through the game. But also, there's some moments where the atmosphere turns kind of like tense and creepy, and I liked that. I liked that contrast.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a place where filled with a lot of secrets and shadiness. Now, I remember the Iwatas ask about the Link's Awakening. And what did you draw from Yumi Nikki?
So has everyone else on the stream played Yumi Nikki?
Like,
No, but if I was inclined to, I'd probably watch a Let's Play.
Okay. Is everyone familiar with it, or should I explain the concept briefly?
I am familiar with Yumi Nikki, but people in the audience may not be.
Right. So Yumi Nikki it's this game where you play as this presumably Japanese girl who's like kind of doesn't leave her bedroom, and you can go to sleep and you wake up in her dream world, and you wake up in this kind of like hub with a bunch of doors everywhere, and you can pick a door to go into, and it's kind of it's a bunch of different like surreal 2D world just randomly connected, and it's very hard, easy to get lost, easy to stumble upon weird stuff, some scary things there, and the object is to kind of collect these like items hidden around the world. And I really liked just the kind of sudden atmospheric changes when you go between areas, the way the music suddenly shifts, or like something scary happens randomly and nothing's really explained. So I was really into that that strangeness and that kind of like eclectic contrast between areas that are connected to each other.
Makes sense. I mean, that's what drew a lot of people to Yumi Nikki. Like,
Yeah.
Definitely one of the most notable freeware games I can think of. And popular. I mean, they tried to make a sequel out of it not too long ago.
Yeah, there's a ton of like fan mods and fan games, and then the creator, said okay to like this 3D sequel, which I haven't played, but
I haven't heard good things about it.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so what kind of themes did you explore in the original Anodyne?
I guess it's basically about kind of a person's sort of self-doubts and how they're like working through the things that are kind of like difficult about their life, or maybe dealing with like escapism, and maybe sort of like how they feel about that, and trying to become a better person, and whether that's possible. And so there's a lot of ways that we just tried to like capture different moods related to that from the different areas and how they feel in terms of the art and the music, and the, like just creating different moods related to that, and then characters throughout the world that are sort of vaguely related to these different moods that we're creating as well.
I have seen that interpretation of Anodyne, and it's like I'm hesitant to delve too deep into the game because of spoilers. I mean, I know the game's quite old, but the game also just appeared on the Nintendo Switch, the first one.
Yeah, excited about that.
Yeah. Well, I suppose in terms of success, were you surprised that Anodyne has done as well as it did?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew when the game released that it was pretty good, but I don't think I really or I don't think we really anticipated that it would kind of really fit into such a huge niche. Like, I knew at the time when I was making it that there weren't a lot of Zelda like indie games, but I didn't really know that like it's actually like a pretty rare genre, especially one that has very strong atmosphere. So I didn't really know that that was a thing that would be very beneficial for the next like 6 years. The fact that people are looking for these kind of like loose, surreal, dreamy like worlds with a kind of a Zelda take that they want to like explore. So I guess in a sense, the success was surprising. Some of it was luck because of the timing with Steam, because like 6 years ago, releasing a game on Steam was much different from now. You got a lot more promotion. Yeah.
There was a lot less on Steam.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like Zelda alikes are still fairly uncommon. Like, I can certainly think of some of recent vintage that we've featured on the show, like Oceanhorn and Blossom Tale, but it's not nearly as prevalent as, say, a Metroidvania, or specifically like a Metroidvania platformer or a roguelike.
Yeah, I'm always like kind of surprised. I mean, I guess it sort of makes sense because like in order for you to make it indie Zelda or like a Zelda like Anodyne, you would have had to have played either the Oracles or like Link's Awakening growing up or something. Like I guess if you play Links to the Past, you probably would end up designing a different type of game. I mean, they're similar, but
if I can tell you that game exists. It's called Blossom Tales. Like if you like the Link to the Past, play that one.
Oh yeah, I played Blossom Tales.
Yeah. Anyway, so I suppose this is a good point as any to move into the sequel, Anodyne 2, which we're showcasing here, because Anodyne 2 is, at least on the surface, very different to the first one. Like, because as far as I can tell, Anodyne 2 here is more of a late 90s, early 2000s, like early PlayStation 2 looking adventure game.
Characterization.
Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out how did we get to this point from, Link's Awakening?
Right. So I guess one first thing just to put out there is just that the way we're framing, in case anyone in the audience is wondering, is just that Anodyne 2 is kind of it's like a franchise installment. It has a spiritual sequel in some ways, but it's also better to think of it as kind of like Final Fantasy 2 versus Final Fantasy 1 instead of like a direct sequel where there's many similarities. Yeah. But
but at the same time, there's a lot of kind of overlap in some of the themes and in the concept of, we didn't really mention this earlier, but in the first Anodyne, rather than having something like a sword, you have a broom that you use to sweep up enemies or to move around bits of dust. And so there's this kind of implied concept from Anodyne 1 that's sort of like the idea of sort of like psychic cleaning or like mental cleaning that we took and sort of ran with in Anodyne 2. And so in Anodyne 2, you play as this character who's called a nano cleaner, and you shrink inside sort of the bodies and the minds of these characters throughout the 3D world. And then the game shifts into this low-res kind of more like in the style of like Link's Awakening or the Oracle games of pixel art, tile-based, top-down adventuring, where you have a vacuum and you suck up dust and suck up enemies and shoot them. And so it kind of starts out as this 3D thing that seems totally separate, and then at certain parts of the game, you warp into this other mode.
Indeed. I've put about an hour into the game so far. You know, as we were given a prototype version, and it's a really strange game. Like, not gonna lie, like, is.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
There's literally nothing like it. You know, I think it's pretty strange.
You know, you're this Nova cleaner who jacks into the minds of these creatures in order to literally clean their minds of negativity. And yeah, I haven't quite seen anything like this. Like, and that's actually a good thing. But
Yeah, thank
anyway,
you.
So it being a spiritual success, doing the Final Fantasy thing, basically. What elements are the same or similar from the first Analgesic? Like, what are fans of the first game going to recognize from that game?
So there's the dungeons are pretty similar, I would say, in terms of their underlying kind of like design vocabulary. So so in Anodyne 1, you have dungeons that are similar to Link's Awakening. So you have to get to a room at the end, and to get there, you have to find keys to open locked doors. And that's kind of the central like level pacing idea in most of the 2D levels in Anodyne 2 that we've shown so far. So there's that similarity, kind of like this nice, kind of like adventuring through these tiny little 2D zones and unlocking stuff and, getting to like experience that. So that's the biggest similarity. And then there's the thematic similarities that Marina was touching on. I think those two are the biggest. I guess a way you could view it is that in Anodyne 2, it's sort of like we've taken... So in Anodyne 1, there's dungeon areas, and then there are areas that are kind of like, forest or like a very large field or a beach that are not dungeons. They're more of like these nature places you explore. And in Anodyne 2, those nature places kind of ended up being the 3D places almost. So it's sort of like you explore through 3D in order to find 2D dungeons. So there's some just kind of like an abstract similarity in how the games feel to go through, I would say.
And given that there's half the game is 3D, how has that changed development?
In many ways, it's changed it a surprisingly small amount, because of like what Sean said, the structure is actually pretty simple. Like when it comes down to it, you're just kind of exploring this 3D space, and it basically takes the place of just the wider, more open areas in the first Anodyne game. And so, basically, the main difference is just that we're doing that I'm like making literally 3D art instead of 2D art. But it feels pretty similar in a lot of ways, and most of the things that are different are just things about our process that are different, even if we were going to make like the same kind of game over.
Yeah, like the game itself, it's a single player adventure, and sometimes there's cutscenes. So in that sense, we've done most of this stuff before, just we're kind of doing it in a different format, and now we're more efficient about it because we have a lot of like experience to draw on. But I guess 3D I guess 3D's been challenging, for both of us, graphic wise, programming wise. Like 3D programming, I don't know, it just sucks basically. But it's really cool because once it gets working, you can do a lot of cool stuff like camera movement and cool camera angles, that kind of stuff. It's just getting it working sucks.
Well, I mean, I suppose the question that beckons is, you don't regret moving to 3D, do you?
No, it's really interesting. Like, there's 2D and 3D, they have different, they can do different things and like exclusively different things. There's some overlap, right? But like, how you approach designing a 3D overworld area would differ a lot from how you would approach it in 2D. I mean, because you have to think about, you know, visual landmarks and like points of view and how you approach certain points in the map. And
Right.
I think atmosphere-wise, it's easier to. I don't know. Marina, you have thoughts on the like visual side? I think it's easier to kind of convey visual drama because of camera angles, but.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely different things are easier to do in 3D versus like what's easy to do in 2D. And I think like what we've done is really kind of like tailor our process and the way that the game is structured around like just like suiting our process to how it feels to like make certain things. Like for instance, in our previous game that we worked on together, Even the Ocean, anytime that it was a 2D side-scrolling game, and anytime that I had to make like a building or something architecturally, just kind of like seemed like a chore, and it didn't really seem satisfying because it was just like the visual sense of a building. But when we do architectural stuff in 3D, it's a lot of fun, and it's like really interesting because the whole point of architecture is kind of that you can see it from different angles and feel what it's like to be in it. And so to be able to do that in 3D and is just a wonderful thing that's like just makes sense. And then what 2D brings is like this ability to like make a sense of like coziness and make a sense of kind of lightness and sort of quickness and easiness to the play that is very, very well suited to the feeling of these little microscopic zones of the sense that you're shrunken and tiny and kind of so like basically separating out the work when we want to have one effect or the other is what we've been doing.
Interesting. Right. So, how do I put this next question? Now, without getting into specifics, in terms of puzzles, is there going to be anything like a certain puzzle in Anodyne 1?
Oh, you mean the puzzle that happens when the game is completed?
The one where that took inspiration from Braid.
Oh, that one. No. No.
Knowing the little I know about Braid, is there a puzzle in this game that requires you to wait just a crap load of time doing absolutely nothing to make something happen?
There might be.
I'm like, the answer in Anodyne 1 is yes.
Yes. No, that was a mistake, but it's fun to leave mistakes in our past.
It's a funny mistake.
It's just like I don't know. At this point, it's just kind of funny. I mean, you know. Okay, I'm spoiler alert. I'm just gonna explain it. But there's a secret item in Anodyne 1. It's just like it's just like a green square. It doesn't do anything. It's just there for like completion's sake, and you have to wait like 2.5 hours to get it. I was inspired by Braid's cloud puzzle, where you have to wait like a long time for a cloud to move to get something. I don't know. It was kind of just a random one-off that I was doing when I'm making the post-game stuff in Anodyne 1. I didn't really think about the fact that, people would want to complete everything, and this would be a major pain in the ass, but now it's too late to change it. So, I mean, I guess I could change it and upload a new build on Steam, but, it's kind of, like, weird.
No, I mean, well, Anodyne is available on more than Steam these days.
Yeah, and I had to upload it on like 6 platforms or something.
Yep. Right. So it's safe to say that Anodyne 2 isn't going to have anything like that, then?
No, there's nothing interesting about that kind of thing. It's just like kind of mean.
I'm not.
It was interesting when Braid did it because it hadn't really been done before, but it had a very short lifespan of actually being like an interesting thing after that.
I think there have been games that have done things that are abstractly similar. Like there's a Japanese game called Takashi's Challenge. I think like there's a boss you have to punch him like 1,000,000 times or something to win. But
if I recall correctly, that game was like literally made as a troll job too. So
yeah.
I mean, there's actually a word for that kind of game, like kusugiri.
Oh,
Kusoge, yeah. Just means
Kusoge.
shit game, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Kusoge.
No, not surprising that would happen. Anyway, so what kind of puzzles would one encounter in Anodyne 2?
I think they're more. They're like the kind that you might have to like stop and think, but it's sort of more like it's not there to be a brain teaser that gets you stuck for 5 minutes. It's meant to be kind of like a fun little thing to work out that creates a nice kind of like friction and texture as you go through the dungeon, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be like solving a Sudoku or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess it's like, any of you play The Witness?
I have not actually played The Witness. I've certainly heard about it, but...
So the puzzles are not similar to The Witness, but in The Witness, you solve a lot of these like puzzles by drawing lines on boards. And when you're first starting out in the sets of puzzles, they're kind of like, first you're learning the rules, and then you kind of have these interesting challenges that are not too hard, but they're fun to figure out. And I think that's about the difficulty that we stop at, because after that, it gets to the point where you have to like sit there and think for like 5 minutes, and I think that kills the flow of dungeon stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Marina designs more of the puzzles, so
Yeah, just in general, like in our games, we're kind of like more interested in puzzles as kind of like texture and flavor as you move through the different spaces. And so I kind of feel like the atmosphere of the spaces and the narrative is kind of the more interesting thing, and we're just not that interested in like difficulty for its own sake. It's basically just like things might be a little difficult, but only in the sense that makes it kind of interesting. So well, there's pretty diverse puzzles in Anodyne 2, though. I think there's some things that kind of, it starts out pretty expected, but there's just kind of some interesting different things that happen as time goes on with your vacuum ability to suck up and shoot things. And what we try to do is make some of the puzzles and the things that you face in each dungeon be kind of narratively relevant to the character and like the problems that they're facing. And so it's also sort of narrative texture as well as just being a little bit of fun stuff to do.
I see. So how far along is the game at this point?
It's
pretty
yeah.
good. It's not done, but it's like it will be done. It's kind of hard to describe, but there's this point in development where you like know it's gonna get done, and we passed that maybe 2 months ago, 1 or 2 months ago. Maybe it was around when we sent out that preview build.
Yeah,
so
basically we just basically have to make stuff. Like all the big decisions have basically been made already, and like we just know generally what we need and just need to like make some stuff to like slot in the whole shape of things.
Yeah, and by make some stuff, it's still a bit of stuff, but it's like, I don't know, it's pretty straightforward, I guess. Like the hard design stuff is pretty much all been done.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it'll be done. Maybe not in May, but at some point this year.
So sometime in 2019.
Yeah, like for sure. We're still officially aiming for May, but I'm like moving around and stuff, and you know, so that might slip.
Right.
But not too much.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Like, now, are you shooting for just PC, or is this going to be on consoles as well?
Just Windows, Mac, and Linux for now. We are. I have a few leads on consoles. It probably won't be a simultaneous release. It would probably be like a few months after the computer version. But if it launches on console, it would launch on all the consoles at once. So, you know, we have a few leads of people who are interested in doing it, but we haven't kind of like signed anything yet. But it would, if we do it, it would be, you know, Switch, Xbox One, and PS4.
Okay.
And it's a Unity game, so it should be pretty fast to port.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, we would have to localize it to a few languages, but you know, maybe like 3-4 months after the PC release.
Okay. And in terms of storefront, where's this headed?
So we actually announced today that we're going to be coming to cartridge first for 30 days. And then after that, we will come out on Steam, itch.io, and GOG. No other storefronts at this moment. But at least those 4 for now.
Gotta say, I'm not familiar with cartridge first offhand.
Oh yeah, so Cartridge, Cartridge is a store that's it was made by a team that is a part of Congregate, the big Flash portal and publisher.
Yeah, now I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So they're kind of like, they're a storefront that is focused on, they try to curate a number of games every month, and so if you've used Congregate before, there are achievements, but they only give them to certain games. So they kind of curate these games and let them add a few achievements, and then those achievements are used on cartridge to sort of unlock, you know, coupons or like discounts on other games. And so I think I thought that was a kind of an interesting concept. And I also heard that they were looking for exclusives, and they were offering, you know, some financial support for development in exchange for a short exclusivity period. So I thought that was just a good idea, because, you know, the indie game market it's pretty like, you know, it's like unstable and like risky. So, you know, if you have a chance to get, you know, some guaranteed safety, you know, it's worth taking, I think.
No, I definitely get that, especially in the days of the indie apocalypse, as they call it.
Yeah.
I'm like, though we are also seeing a lot more in the way of storefronts opening.
Oh yeah, Discord and Epic.
Yeah, I gotta say I like Cartridge's thing a lot more than say Epic. Like, but yeah, if there's opportunities for devs for some stability, why not take it?
Yeah, I think it's nice. Like, you know, I'm interested in learning more about Epic and Discord, but right now I think they're mostly just like curated games only. So
pretty much, I think Discord seems to be easier to reach out for. Epic, it's like if they're not interested in you, they're not they're probably they might allow you on the store, but you know, they're not going to support you. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Either like with the free game deal or, you know, the year-long exclusivity.
Yeah, it's really long.
Well, it's like that's a policy that's kind of been backfiring. Like, but that's a story for another day. You know.
Right.
Still, you know, it goes to show you the PC marketplace isn't constrained by one store. You know, it's like, I know Steam is like a de facto monopoly or whatever, but, you know, there are other places to bring your wares. Anyway, Pricing. Have you figured out pricing for Anodyne 2 yet?
We're still thinking about it. It'll be at least 15. A lot of developers are doing 20 nowadays for a similarly length game. So we might do 20 or somewhere in between, maybe like $17.33. I don't know. Something weird like that. But it'll be at least 15. So I'll figure that out eventually. I don't know when yet, but at some point.
All right.
I mean, I think in some ways, indies, and there's like some strategy in the pricing because you do have to nowadays. You want to make a lot of your money in like the long tail. You don't want to like bet everything on making it all in a month. You want to be able to plan ahead 5 years and think about like your sales strategies and like other things like that. So a higher price point could be useful in that way, but we're not sure yet. But at least 15. No more than 20. It won't be more than 20.
Okay. So
Yeah.
$15 to $20.
Yeah, I should have just said that.
Anyway, right. So I'm going to see if my colleagues have any other questions for you both.
Sure.
I think I'm good on questions. Like, this game seems pretty interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Gullet? Twilight?
I was gonna let Gullex go first, but
All right.
he hasn't said anything. Anyway, when I played the demo, I like the scene so far. It's definitely grabbed my interest, and I'm eager to see what the rest of the game is like. And
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I hope you like it.
Yeah, I'm like I said, it's certainly unique, and we like that on this show. I'm like, believe me, we do play a lot of a certain type of game. So when something breaks the mold, it's always worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, anyway, we are looking forward to Anodyne 2 when it releases later on in 2019. Maybe we'll review it when it gets released. Anyway, keep an eye out on various PC digital stores. It's coming to Cartridge Congregate first, then GOG, itch.io, and Steam afterwards. It'll be available on PC, Mac, and Linux, and it'll be priced in the range of $15 to $20. And thank you both for taking time out of your schedule for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thank you.
No problem. All right, Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. So this week we are talking about the impending retirement of Reggie Fils-Aimé. You probably know who this is, and if you don't, I'm like,
You got room under that rock?
Yeah, that's a very. That's not a rock. That is a fucking mountain. Because Reggie has been one of the most high-profile faces of one of the most high-profile companies in the industry, and his impending retirement was an earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the last.
He's been the American face, at least, of Nintendo, like literally since the DS.
I can tell you the first time I saw Reggie, it was at E3 2004, Nintendo's presentation. That was his introduction to the world.
Isn't he like the second or third president of Nintendo America?
Possibly, but when he was introduced in 2004, he was not the president. He actually gained that a couple years later, if I'm recalling correctly. But yeah, he was he was definitely, post that era of Nintendo. Like, interestingly enough, he came in about another shift in. When Nintendo was undergoing a big shift, the likes of Hiroshi Yamauchi was retiring.
Mhm.
The old Nintendo CEO, his son-in-law Minoru Arakawa was the first president of Nintendo. He retired in 2002. Howard Lincoln was left. Just a lot of people that defined the 80s and 90s Nintendo on both sides of the ocean were leaving.
Mhm.
And we're seeing that again. Okay, granted, in the case of Iwata, that was more an untimely passing.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Mhm.
it's like, and Genroku Takeda retired. Now, he's been there since like the 80s, maybe even earlier, the 70s. Like, he was their big technology guy. It's like Shigeru Miyamoto is quickly becoming like the last of the old school Nintendo people there.
Sadly so.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Well, on the
Sakurai,
other
depending
hand,
on how
it's
you
not
want to count
bad
them.
to get new people in
No,
that have
I'm not-
new.
That's true.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is a thing that is happening.
Mhm.
We are, it's like we are entering a new Nintendo era.
Mm.
They've got a new president. They've got a permanent president over in Japan. And now fucking Bowser has taken over Nintendo of America.
First Order releasing Mother 3. I'm kidding, but
Yeah.
Well, and they did the same thing. Apparently, he's been working. He's been being groomed for this for a while, and as was
Yeah.
mentioned, they introduced him before they said he's going to be taking over, so that people would, get used to him a little.
and not cause
Right.
massive riots in the street.
Well, it's also
And also get the Bowser jokes out of your system at least a little.
well, it's like I knew they had hired Doug Bowser beforehand because I had heard the Bowser jokes, when they had first hired him. Of course,
Mhm.
It's kind of our jobs to pay attention to the industry. So, Reggie's retirement is where the world at large got introduced to Doug Bowser.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had the picture with Mario and Luigi tied up.
Because they couldn't not.
No, of course not. Of course they were going to lean into it. They're probably going to lean into it in his, first official Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
seriously, probably every time they have him on a direct, they're gonna be Mario and Luigi in some perilous situation in the background.
Yeah. But, the retirement of Reggie Fils-Aimé is the closing of a very interesting era for Nintendo, a very interesting person for Nintendo. Because how do I put this? Okay, Reggie was certainly a corporate shill drone. You would never forget that he was somebody who made, forget his presidency. He's a guy whose background was in marketing.
Yeah.
It's for example, before he was at Nintendo, he was at Pizza Hut. He invented something called the Bigfoot Pizza, among other things. He's worked at other places as a marketer. That's his background, and Reggie could be pretty frustrating in that regard. He never stopped talking like a marketer. You just, when you've been working the beat, you know the language. And
he at least was a marketer who did a convincing job of caring about the brand.
Yeah, that's the flip side of Reggie. He was very human, which is just contrast Reggie to any of the stiff shirts at Microsoft or Sony, or especially EA. He's Nintendo in general has more animated people than other businesses.
I think EA are legally required to have the fun stripped out of you.
That wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's their core mandate.
Indeed.
But also significant is, I'd say, Reggie was the highest profile non-Japanese person of color to head the video game industry. It's like, because Reggie is he's an African American, and there's not many people of African descent that have that high visibility. If anyone else that I can really think of, it's like, if a person of color is in charge of video game stuff in the industry, it's most likely it's because they're from Asia. It's an unfortunate consideration that.
Or if they're one of those backroom managers who they're not in front of the camera.
Right. Like I said, I'm talking about high profile.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, there's nobody really waiting in the wings to step up to that kind of representation. Like, there's not another Reggie. I'm sure Doug Bowser's a nice guy and all, but he's still a white guy. It's like, I'm not saying that Nintendo's doing a racist thing or anything. It's just an unfortunate implication of the passing of the torch.
Yeah, it's nice to see representation in the industry, and it's always a little bit sad when it's less.
But on the upside, Reggie is going out on his own terms. He's not being forced out. He's not being pushed aside. He's not deemed too old. Nintendo's not. They're not the ones who's doing this. Reggie has said, he wants to spend more time with his family, which I know is a very tainted phrase in this day and age. It's like, when you hear somebody wants to spend more time with their family, you usually expect the political scandal. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be the case with Reggie.
Yeah, by all accounts, he's been a pretty stand-up guy, so.
Yeah.
But I suppose, to get down to the base question, why are we talking about Reggie specifically? Outside of, the minority aspect or whatever. It's because he changed the face of presentations. There's no other way to say it. Him and Iwata. Like, it's like, there's no other way to put it. Like, Reggie, in spite of his marketing background, like his introduction, like, to the world, anyone else remember it? I do. I still remember it very vividly. It's like, he said his name is Reggie, and he was here to kick ass. You did not hear, video game stuffed shirts speak like this. And you, by and large, still don't.
And even as a marketing guy, not every marketing person is willing to let themselves be the meme.
Yes.
Or the butt of the joke, as it were.
Yes. It's like, and Iwata and Reggie were a pretty unique team. And the days of Iwata puppets and Reggie claymation dolls were fun, but they have alas come to an end. But don't feel bad for Reggie. He had a 15-year run at Nintendo. That's a long time.
Yeah, looking at his Wikipedia thing, I didn't know he was 57. I thought he was like in his mid 40s. He looks real good.
Yeah, apparently he drank the fountain of youth.
Yeah, he's aging gracefully so far.
believe me, you were not the only one who was surprised to learn that Reggie was almost 60.
Hmm.
But yeah, and he's not quite retirement age, but he's definitely getting up there.
And also, let's be real, the execs at Nintendo make bank. He has enough money to live off
Yeah,
of.
executive retirement age is
Yeah.
always different than normal people retirement age.
Right, though I'm not sure if like NOA had their policies changed. Like they were they like Nintendo was very skinflintish back in the old days. Like nobody could own stock, no frills, no corporate jets. They had a bad experience with Atari, and basically swore off all that shit.
Yeah.
But we are talking about a different age. And speaking of different ages, what plans for the future? Probably in the short term, not much is changing. Like, I mean, realistically, we've laid down. We're in what, year 3 of the Nintendo Switch?
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
NOA isn't the most decision-making branch of Nintendo anyway.
Now,
Yeah.
that's something I hope changes, because NOA back in the 90s used to be in charge of way more shit. Until Nintendo of Japan took that away from them. When it came to Rare's games, NOA called the shots. Now, that's
Yeah.
something I miss.
Now
I
everything
hope,
is handled from Japan
yeah, it's like
for
I
all
hope-
territories.
I hope that is a thing that changes. I don't know. And indeed, it's worth noting that even though Reggie was president, he wasn't the top guy at Nintendo of America. If you want to know who was, the president of Nintendo. Starting with Satoru Iwata, that position is the real top position.
Mhm.
He was I forget the title, but he was like the CEO of NOA or something like that. He was basically the top guy there.
Yeah, back in
So-
the 90s, the Japanese president would basically let all the runnings be handled by the regional presidents.
Yes.
As long as they didn't do something stupid, they basically had carte blanche.
Right, and Nintendo never dealt with the infighting that, say, Sega did.
Oh, God. Ugh.
As you can tell by the fact that they don't have any completely redundant consoles on the market.
Yeah. Yeah. God damn it. Sega Japan.
Well, that's more Sega of America's folly. Hey, the 32X was a good idea. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't. Anyway, but yeah, it's Reggie isn't officially gone yet. He will be retiring on tax day. April 15th will be his official last day. I'm not sure if Nintendo will have any further celebrations or videos or whatnot from him. I expect at least one more goodbye video.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There might be
Yeah.
one last direct, even if it's a small direct, that also has Reggie's goodbye in it.
Yeah, because he is still going to be around for, at time of recording, about a month and a half. So there's still time for him to do one or two last things in terms of presentations.
Yeah. I'm shocked, he didn't wait to do this till after one more E3, but I guess to each their own.
I'm maybe he just wanted to wait until the new year to retire. And it's we do not know the particulars and such, but he is retiring when he is retiring. And if it comes out that he's retiring for a different reason, well, I'm sure it'll come out.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, so, I suppose there's not much left to say except, we wish him luck in retirement.
Bowser had better do a good job of running Nintendo.
If not, they'll defer to Pauline.
Uh-huh.
All right, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. the week ahead, coming up on Friday, we will be having a multiplayer session on Iffy Institute. You may remember that we featured this game about a half a year ago, maybe more. It was in a rather early access state of affairs, but I am pleased to say that this game has been released. And so it is fit for reviewing. Let's see. We've also got reviews on Sunday. We have Iffy Institute, Riddled Corpses EX, and Bloom Labyrinth. Yeah, Bloom Labyrinth is a game. Like, it's, well, more on that on Sunday. Now, until then, good gaming and such.